Welcome to the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast. Today's episode, Finding Deals.
Welcome to the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast with Scott Whitwam, your blueprint to financial abundance. Settle in as we explore the mindset and methods for wealth building through real estate.
Welcome back. I'm Scott Whitwam, and today we'll be talking about finding deals as real estate investors. And to do this, I've invited my friend, Brandon Simmons. He is an investor, a coach, a trainer who has advanced and been very successful in investing himself, has helped many investors become successful, including me. So welcome to the show, Brandon the Man Simmons.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
I'm really glad to have you here. It's not by chance. I was just waiting for the right opportunity, and I'm glad you could make time to.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do appreciate the fact that, we'll probably get into some of the stories, but the fact that you're proactive in helping people, learn this business. You like to see other people succeed. So why don't you tell a little bit of your background and experience in real estate investing industry?
Okay. Well, we moved to Arizona. And I got out here in 2009. The rest of the family got here in 2010. I was out here a few months before them. And then I found this podcast called the Flip to Freedom Podcast. And on there was a guy named Sean Terry. And I found out that Sean Terry was local here in Phoenix. To kind of let you know how long ago this was, I had a BlackBerry.
Oh, my goodness.
So I was listening to this podcast on my BlackBerry. Met up with Sean, got to know him, and got into wholesaling. My first wholesale deal was a deal that I actually did with Sean Terry. And what was great about that, I remember he sat down and told me I need to write down my goal, what my goals are and stuff like that. One of the goals I wrote down on a little index card was I wanted to make $5,000 in the next 30 days, using wholesaling.
Right.
And I made $5,500 the day after that goal. It was actually the day after my birthday. So made my first wholesale deal in 2010. Did several deals back and forth while I was working full time at Wells Fargo back then. And later on, Sean called me up and asked me to come work for him, and worked for Sean for about 5-6 years doing dispositions, acquisitions, and I was a COO of the real estate company. And then I went into coaching and had my own real estate company. So Sean and I did coaching together. We've had, I think, 700 plus people go through the coaching program that we had. It was called the First Check Challenge, all about helping wholesalers get their first deal. So that was a lot of fun. I've been doing this since 2010. And one of the things that I really love is collaborating. And I started up a mastermind. I never charged for it. It's called the Go Givers,
right?
Which you've been to.
Yep.
A lot of the big time wholesalers and real estate investors that are out here in Arizona have been to it. And it was basically, the idea was to get people together that were full-time in real estate, sharing the best practices, helping everyone's business grow. And it started with like 17 people when we first started going.
Wow. Yeah.
You probably know a lot of the big names out here, from Pace Morby, Brent Daniels, Jamil Damji. We had all the owners from Batch Skip Tracing before they were Batch.
Before they were Batch, yeah.
They were in there. Tons more. There's Ryan Zolan, Brian Kandesky.
Right.
There's a lot of wonderful people that are in there. And the idea behind the Go Giver was, it's the book, The Go Giver. I always share a copy of that book with everyone that's in there. And the idea is to help everyone figure a way to help each other, but also be open receive.
Right.
And I think it's helped all of our businesses.
Yeah, it's great. In fact, that's where I've met most of those people, those names that you mentioned, was there at a Go Giver event. Our common thread, though, was Sean Terry.
Yeah.
In his Flip to Freedom. I did my first wholesale deal in 2000, I think it was 2011. Not really knowing much. I bought it's really funny. I bought a course online, and I tell this story in more detail, but I bought a course online, and in today's money, it was about $6,500. So it wasn't cheap, right?
Right.
But when I got it, it had a bunch of cassette tapes. I mean, that's how long ago this was, right? It had a bunch of cassette tapes, and I kid you not, it had a couple pieces of paper like this, and that was your whole wholesale kit.
That was it.
That was it. But I made 10 grand on my first wholesale deal.
Oh, wow.
When I did it. After I took it, I was like, man, what a horrible course. This thing is horrible. But then an opportunity came along, and I saw it. And so when I actually was introduced to Sean Terry and his Flip to Freedom program, I looked at it and go, man, this is a whole lot more comprehensive,
Right.
And then through the Flip to Freedom program, I signed up for the First Check Challenge. I thought this was pretty cool, and I actually had just as I was signed up for the First Check Challenge, I'd made an offer on a house not very far from here where we're sitting in the studio.
I remember this.
And you go, hey, I'm local. I'll come with you.
I do remember that.
And you actually came to me with the house,
Yep.
helped me knock that deal down. I made $30,000 on that deal, which I spent learning the wholesale business, but that was my seed money, was that first deal that we did.
One of the things I remember about you was, and this is, I think, the biggest differentiator from people that are successful in this business, is you were taking action quick. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that sign up for a course or a coaching program or buy something to make them feel good and warm and fuzzy for a little bit, but they don't do anything with it, just collects dust.
Yeah, I think and now that I'm coaching, people, one of the things that I see is people really are satisfied with where they're at is the problem. They get in these programs.
They're hungry.
They're satisfied. And what they're hoping to do is they're hoping they can get in a program where you'll do all the work for them.
Yep. I've been asked to do a lot of stuff too.
And I've actually been in some of Sean's online, trainings that he does, live. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the same thing as people are asking him questions, and it's like, dude, you got to go do some work.
Right.
You just don't pay for the course. Yeah, you get the knowledge, you get the training, but you're going to have to take some action in order to bring this about. And that's one of probably the major reason why in my coaching program I've told people that I didn't think it was a good fit for them and just passed on them. I don't want to take somebody's money if I know that they're not going to take action.
Right. That's probably the biggest thing. The other thing I learned too was helping people staying accountable. Like, I remember when I first got into the group coaching, I was like, gosh, I'm depressed because some of them weren't having success.
Right.
And I remember I was talking to Sean about this, and he's like, well, let's treat them like they're an employee. Let's have them report every week. Let's see how many leads they generated. Let's see how many offers they made, how many contracts they signed. And as soon as I started doing the accountability, then it's just like, oh, that's why they're not doing anything.
Yeah. You got to people, and that's the reason why, like in a one-on-one coaching program that I do, there's accountability. So, we go, okay, so this week you're going to do A, B, C, and D, right? And then when we get on the phone and I ask, okay, what did you do with A? What did you do with B? And if I get, well, I didn't do anything, well, what are we going to talk about today? We still haven't done what you need to do last week, so tell me what you're dealing with, we'll go over that. But really, we're not advancing. You just basically wasted a week of the coaching program.
Yep. Oh, 100%. One of the so luckily I've been blessed to kind of help a lot of other investors with some of their coaching businesses and stuff. And you probably know Chris Crone and Carlos Reyes, Sal Shakir, and Cody Sperber, and a lot of these guys, I've helped with some of their stuff. And one of the things that I've always found whenever we do like an event, right, where there's hundreds of people at something, if we do a workshop style and we actually get people on the phone,
right,
of course you're nervous and you're going to mess up, but you've seen people mess up, fail, and then by the end of it, over a couple of days, like you see the confidence, you see people getting stuff under contract, and then it creates faith and belief in everyone else when they see other people doing it. Like, oh,
let me share really a little story around that. We were in the First Check Challenge, and you were in your office, and you were like, well, let me show you how this works, and you just jumped onto Zillow, and you dialed a for sale by owner guy. And you go, hey, I'm Brandon Simmons. And he's like, I don't want to deal with investors. And you're talking him through it. And now all of a sudden he's talking about selling you properties, like 6 properties in Florida and Arizona. And how can we do this? And I may be willing to do seller financing. And, but most people never get those deals because they never take any action.
I'm glad you remember that. I mean, I've done this so many times. So it's like I've been on so many calls I don't even remember. But I think the biggest thing is, like you said, just you're going to mess up.
Right.
It's okay. And just be uncomfortable, being a little bit uncomfortable, and you get better and better at it. Like, you think about how you are now compared to when you first started talking to a seller.
Right. Oh, yeah. It's totally different. And here's one of the things I think that people miss is most people can't hold themselves accountable. Now,
Right.
I'm pretty good at holding myself accountable just because of the nature of who I am. I'm very a personality, you know. But I realize even my shortcomings. And there's probably a lot of people, you know, it's like, oh yeah, I guess I do have shortcomings. I just don't like to admit them. Well, none of us do, you know. And I hire coaches. One of the things that really helped me put this over this was Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Love that book.
And you know, so I'm hiring coaches, going, man, should I be hiring coaches? I actually know this stuff, but should I? And he said that he always has coaches. Think about where he's at now, and he still has coaches today.
Right.
You know, and so I remember one time that I'd hired a coach on the real estate brokerage side of things. And, you know, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And they put me in a group coaching program. It was with Craig Proctor, one of the top North America real estate coaches. And I was in his program, and then I called the offices. I go, guys, this is not what I want. I don't want group coaching. Look, I plan on doing, you know, hitting the top 5% of real estate agents. And so they actually then went through another screening process before they would admit me to their elite, you know, their platinum coaching program. And I got hooked up with a guy named Todd Walters, which is a $1 billion real estate agent. And I remember one time,
Holy smokes.
So we did some, now at high level, we're doing group coaching, but there's only like 3 or 4 people in this thing, right?
A lot more intimate.
Lot more intimate. And I remember there's one guy who's in this program, and he's a top real estate agent, but he had those assignments, those A, B, C, and D he was supposed to do, and he came back, he hadn't done any of them, but he had like 3 excuses. And I'd never heard a real estate coach do this before. Todd Walters absolutely blew his top. He goes, I got better things to do. If you're not serious about doing this, then you need to get out of this program because there's somebody else that wants to be in your spot. He says, if you want to make $1 million a year in this in this industry, then you do what you're taught, or you get out of the program. I thought, that's actually good accountability.
Very much so.
You know,
big time.
Yeah, that's big. It's big time.
Yeah.
But it really puts you in a check. But you think about it, Brandon. If you're coaching, if you're working with people that are paying, we'll just say $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 to be in a program.
Right.
And you've got a waiting list, are you going to waste your time and hours on it? No, you're going to find the person who will hold themselves accountable. And that's what, you know, some of the other one-on-one coaching programs do, is help teach people accountability. So,
I mean, I know that the reality is there's some really crappy programs out there. There's some really overpriced junk and things that people pay a lot for because of a name or social media status and stuff like that. And what I found is, you know, people will pay whatever for coaching and stuff, but it really just goes back to value. Are you giving more value than what you're charging?
Right.
Like anything in life, right?
Right.
And if you give them so much more value, it doesn't. If I said it's $100,000, right, you'd be like, oh heck no, I'm not going to do this, right? That's way too expensive for most people. But if I said it's $100,000, guarantee you'll make $1 million this year.
Yeah, who isn't going to pay the $100,000?
Or if I said you're going to make, there's a way to find $5,000, but you need to come up with $100,000 to go figure it out, or $10,000, right? So whatever the number is,
right.
The reality is, I think a lot of coaching programs are probably overpriced, but the ones who are the right coaches, the good mentors, the good coaches, they're in high demand,
right?
And you know their time is valuable, and they should be compensated too. But the thing that I love about what you're talking about, that coach said was, you know, you're holding people accountable, not making excuses. There's something about that accountability, you know. I think a coach, I'm thinking about how I like to be coached. And I think a good coach, they do 2 things. One is they know when to pat on the back. They give them a pat on the back. They recognize them. And I think people need to feel that when they're kind of going through that, like, oh, you didn't do so good, but, you know, tweak this. Okay, wow, you picked that up really good. So you pat them on the back, give them a compliment, right? The other one is the accountability and kick them in the butt, right?
Oh, yeah, you got to have both.
Yeah.
You know, and as humans, we all kind of need that both. You know, most of us aren't so motivated that we can pat ourselves down the back and motivate ourselves. At some point, we look at it and go, you know, am I really doing the right thing? And that's where coaching comes in. And I've had it when I just did a show in California where we were promoting the coaching program, and I had people, you know, I was talking to, and it's like, well, I hired this coach and it's not doing this and that. And I'm thinking, I know that guy. I know his coaching program. I know it works. So I know it's not the coach's issue. So it's got to be something that the student isn't putting into practice. And I always say this, action always trumps inaction.
Oh yeah,
Imperfect
action.
Yeah,
too.
even imperfect action, because you learn from your mistakes. And one of the things I do with our beginning coaching students is I say, hey, look, here's the deal. You go out and find phone numbers on Zillow, people selling the houses, and give them a call and just make them the most ridiculous offer ever. Yep. It's not about buying the house. It's about learning to communicate with sellers. It's about learning to be confident. And, you just never know. One of them might say yes.
I think a good coach gives a safe place for people to fail.
Right.
It's like when I first learned to drive a car, my dad had a stick shift Ford Ranger, right? I had to learn to drive a stick shift.
Right.
That was my first car. And I was stalling, shifting the gears and the clutch and all this stuff. Both hands are doing something, both feet are doing something, and you stall it all the time, right? But I practiced in a safe place in the driveway, right? And then moved on to like a parking lot, and then you can get out on the roadway.
Yeah.
So I think practice, a lot of that. And even today, I run a sales team, and one of the things that we do is we try to do role plays. And like, why do role plays? Because it's still practice. It's still working. It's like going to the gym. And I always call it our morning stretches. We're doing some morning stretches, warming up on some role plays, and then go out and hit the ground running.
Yeah, and I do that with my students. And what I do is I do kind of a step in the role play. So I do a soft role play where every question you answer, I give you the perfect answer back, right? So you ask me a question, I give you the perfect answer as a seller. But you never get those, right? But but it gets them, and then I make it a little harder. Now all of a sudden I throw little curveballs in it, and then I make it more like what it really is when you're on the phone. And so that when you do go off and start making those calls I tell you to make, you at least got a little bit of expectation.
Right.
Because I don't care what industry you're in, if you're in sales, you can't be afraid of the word no.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't care whether you're selling cars or refrigerators.
Right. The other thing too, I always empower people because I've had some great mentors and coaches myself. One of my sales mentors is a guy named Claude Diamond, and he teaches like the gut sales method. And one of the biggest things is you have permission to fire the client if they're rude or mean to you. Say, okay, have a good day, bye, and get rid of them. Yeah,
I had a coach one time tell me the same thing, because I used to work with everybody, and you just grit through it. And he said, hey, you can fire a client. And I go, you can? And I was like, man, that was a day I got freed. It was just like, no, I'm not working with you. Here's a referral. You go talk to this person, because you and I, obviously, we don't get together.
Right.
But I've also learned from the DISC system people's personalities. And I don't mistake jerks for just a personality trait.
That's a big thing. Yeah, because you have the driver personality types, like like the Donald Trump red driver. They shake your hand and turn it over. They just want to be in charge. Not that they may come across aggressive, or you may think they're too aggressive, right? But the reality, that's just how they think and talk and speak. It's not.
Yeah, you show up at their house and all they want is an offer. Give me a number. Give me a number. Yeah. I was like, look, you got to answer some questions. How long ago did you do the roof? What's the AC like? Well, I just want a number. You don't need to know that. Yeah, I do. And I want to give you a number that you can rely, so, but then you'll get the person that's compliant, right? And they'll answer, they'll be really nice, but they'll never sign an agreement. It's like
you got to know how to flush it out. It's about being persistent, right? And persistent with a smile. And, just pushing through and persevering through that, because a lot of times it is trying to get people. A lot of people are scared, and I think a lot of people think the 11th. I think Claude Diamond says that the 11th commandment is you're allowed to lie as long as it's to a salesperson. So, I think the reality is people think it's okay, and I just flush it out. Yeah, it's like it's okay to tell me no.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things I learned from you is you just up front let people know it's okay to tell me no. And that frees them up. They're like, oh, well, I don't have to lie, because if I decide I don't want that, I just say, no, not interested. And it's like, okay, we'll move on, Okay, so all of this, I think, is really critical in the buying process, as far as if you're going to be a successful investor, understanding the coaching process, understanding the motivation process, understanding these components. But what I really wanted to talk about today, and I'm going to shift us, so this is kind of like shifting into second gear here.
Let's go.
Is about the big question we get asked all the time as coaches is, how do I find deals? Now, obviously you can find deals, but if you don't have these other components in place, what are you going to do with them? Right. But really, how do we find deals? Are there still deals in the marketplace? Some people say, well, the real estate's so high, there's no deals available. But let's talk about finding deals.
They're out there everywhere. I think it just depends on what your budget is for marketing, and what people want to do is depending if the people are just starting out, they probably don't have a lot of money for marketing. Right. So you would figure out ways that cost nothing or very little to market to those companies that have a lot of money for marketing. Then the gold standard is probably going to be like Google PPC, right? And stuff where you can target and have keywords that only certain people are landing on. And then you can even have a filtered out web page where only if they fill out the complete, all the questions.
People are pre-qualifying themselves.
Yeah, they're pre-qualifying themselves. So you're talking to the most motivated, most motivated.
Yeah. And of course that's a whole lot more expensive to do something like that. But, even when I got started in wholesaling, I had, money to market, but man, we did the bandit side. So, okay, here's how I started I went out and pounded bandit signs in myself, right?
Yes.
And then I hired somebody to do my bandit signs. Then I found out they weren't doing what they were supposed to, so I found an app that I could track them as they're doing bandit signs, and that whole thing. So we did the bandit signs. We've done the knocking on doors. All these things still work today.
They still, Sean Terry, he's my mentor when I first got into wholesaling, and he would get a list of foreclosures and go knock on doors and, and you start out whatever way you can. I think the reality is if you really are good at networking, you can meet 5 to 10 other investors and wholesalers that already have leads or already have a marketing budget, or maybe you can, co-op with them and
joint venture somehow and some deals with them. Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
I tell a lot of my beginning real estate investors that there's people all over your city who are advertising that they've got houses for sale. Now, they don't say for sale by owner. They say garage sale, estate sale. They say those kind of things. I actually have a rental house right now that I bought. I'd purchased this house I was flipping. And then while we were in the process of remodeling it, across the street, they have this big garage sale. So I walked across the garage sale. I bought some scaffolding. I bought a concrete saw. And then I just asked, I said, is the owner around? And the person goes, no, the owner passed away. His brothers run the sale. I said, well, do you know if he wants to sell the house? She goes, he's right over there.
Bingo.
I still have that house today as a rental property because, again, it had a "I might be for sale" sign. It said garage sale, and I just
one of my good friends, when he was a real estate agent and he thought he wanted to go in commercial real estate. Young guy, I think he wasn't even 20 when I first met him, and he just got into real estate. He just got his license, and he didn't have any money for marketing. So we talked about driving for dollars and what to look for and stuff like that, and he pretty much figured out that he could get about 200 leads and would get a deal about every 200
houses. Yeah.
And he would do the fast people search, like the free search engines before, batch skip or PropStream or
the real obscure ones like Condoodle and those kind of things.
Yeah, like how to find, the phone numbers and stuff.
Yep.
I did bandit signs. I did yellow letters, handwriting.
Oh, yeah, handwritten yellow letters.
And I thought I was so smart. I remember I figured out how to take off the yellow perforated papers and put them into like a printer.
Right.
So I'd take a white sheet of paper, line it up just right, and then make copies with everything but the name and the address of the person. So I most of it was written out, and then I just filled out the rest. Yeah. I mean, everything from direct mail to Facebook ads and Google pay-per-click and all this. But the reality is, this is what I think a lot of people forget about is people pay all this money for leads, but they don't really do any follow-up with sellers. There's no reminders, text message reminders, no email reminders, no automations going on. They call them once and they're done.
And they're done.
In fact, I think their studies like 50% of the leads are never called a second time.
Yeah, and see, the statistics say that it takes 6 to 7 touches before somebody will do business
5
with
to
you.
12. Between 5 to 12, 80% of the deals will happen between 5 to 12
So if you've got
touches.
an address, you're going to call them, then you're going to drop them a postcard, then you may do a yellow letter, then you're going to call them again, and you're going to have some kind of sequence in order so that when they're ready to take action, all of a sudden when you call them, they go, "Oh yeah, I remember you. Yeah, you've been around a long time, haven't you?" Well, that's because now they've developed a name recognition.
Right.
And sometimes you find people that go, "Oh yeah, I've got your postcard on my fridge.
Yeah.
We've been thinking about it, and I put your postcard on the fridge. And yeah, when can you come over and talk to us?"
I do almost all of our acquisitions is done almost all virtual. But we used to do in person. There's so
Right.
many times I'd show up to someone's house. They'd have like a bunch of postcards from other wholesalers,
Right.
We buy houses guys and
Right.
stuff. And they're like, "I got all your postcards here." I'm like, "Yeah, you got them all." Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm glad I'm here.
I'm glad I'm here to
And then,
talk. Yeah.
Then we get the deal,
Right.
So,
Well, I want to go back to something that you mentioned about network. One of the things I think that that people don't realize, and I think it's Michael Eisner that wrote a book. Can't remember if it was him. It was 6 Degrees of Separation, but it has to do with the fact that I have a network of people. Okay, I mean, open your phone. How many contacts you got? I've got a network of people, right? But you've got a different network of people. So if I can network with you, I'm expanding my network way beyond me. And a lot of people are like, "Well, I don't want to go to network. I don't want to go to the investor meeting. I don't want to go to the chamber meeting. I don't want to go to that networking group, down the road or whatever." But I can tell you, as a real estate investor, I've been involved in many different investor groups outside of the real estate investor groups. So like the chambers, the BNIs, Sig 7, a bunch of these other groups that are out there. And then there's private and independent ones. You almost never find real estate investors in those groups.
yeah. I'll share the way the whole Go Giver. A lot of people in our industry, they know about the Go Giver Master. It's nicknamed the Go Giver, REI Mastermind, right? REI Mastermind #Go Giver, because I don't own the trademark to Go Giver.
Go Giver trademark.
But everyone calls it the Go Giver
Right.
because I gave everyone a Go Giver book that's in there. And I kind of vet them before they show up. I want to make sure that they are going to be a Go Giver and
Right.
not just taker, right?
Right.
A go taker.
Go
Take and go.
taker.
Yeah.
Take and go, yeah.
One of the things I always think about is, so I went to BNI meetings and I saw how people were networking and helping each other. I'm like, this is a great concept. Like, the idea is to figure out how to give someone else a referral,
Right.
how to help them in that meeting. And then they'd meet like for a breakfast or a lunch meeting. And so I'm like, oh, this is pretty simple. I can just have lunch. I can have lunch meeting. Most title companies are always asking to pay
Right.
for lunch. And
Yeah, how can we sponsor an event? How can we do? Yeah.
So they would cover like lunch a lot of times. And then we would just get together and figure out how to help each other. A lot of times we do like a little presentation, like introducing who they are, their background and stuff, and share one thing that has helped them this year or whatever. And then the rest of the group would go around and share one thing that's working well in their business and then ask what something that they need help with. And then the idea was just to help each other and come up
Right.
with ideas to help them hire a new acquisition person or a new marketing channel or whatever their questions was. And
Right.
as a collective, it goes back to the Think and Grow Rich, the mastermind
Right.
principle. Sean Terry's mastermind is Syndicate 9, and we came up with that. It was because I said, "Hey, Sean, the 9th principle in Think and Grow Rich is the mastermind principle." So
Right.
we just named it Syndicate
Syndicate
9.
9. Yeah.
But the idea on something like this is I always think about like you can go to all the parties or all the networking
Right.
stuff. If you think about the kids in school, there's always the popular kids,
Right.
the cheerleaders, the jocks and stuff. But there's this kid that always would have the parties at his house, and he became part of the popular group just because he had the party at his house.
Right. You had the location.
So I decided I'm just going to do my own networking group, create my own networking group,
Right.
make it how I want, and get the people that I like to be in there around me, and start out like that. And start out, it doesn't have to be gigantic.
Right.
What's crazy about, we started with like 17 people or 14 people. There's over 200 people. Now, not everyone
shows every event, but yeah.
But like, when I would hold those on a regular basis, it was crazy because I ended up doing deals with pretty much everyone in the group. So it means even though I didn't charge them,
Right.
I somehow did a deal with them, or they did a deal with someone else in the group.
Right.
So
Well, and that's how real networking's done, because and again, back to Michael Eisner, giver's gain. It's about how can you help other people's grow. In fact, you want to know a real interesting story?
yeah,
I helped a guy on a couple real estate deals, right? And then one day he provided me a referral to a property. He goes, hey, this person I've known since they were a kid. You need to call them. They're in a kind of a distress situation and have to do something. You're sitting in a podcast studio from that referral right now today. This deal right here where you're sitting in came from a referral from somebody that I had helped do a couple other real estate deals.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, so you just never know how they're going to come together. But it wasn't like, hey, I'll help you if you get me this. No,
Right.
I helped them a couple times, and then this was the product of giving to somebody else.
I think a lot of people go into backwards.
Right.
Like, what are they going to give me? What am I going to give?
What am I going to get out of it? Yeah.
And if you think about almost all the time, and Zig Ziglar says this, like if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get everything you want.
Get everything else you want.
And I think it, but you got to be, that's the key, the last part, you got to be open receiving.
You do. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to. You know what? Hold on. You know what? We ran out of time, man.
Oh.
We got to close this thing. That's it for this week's Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast. I want to thank you for taking time to join me. I invite you to subscribe today and be part of our growing community and leave us a review. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can always find the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. This is Scott Whitwam. I've been here with Brandon Simmons. Be sure to join me on the next episode of the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast, where we're wealth building through real estate.